Chapter 6 is called Advanced Critical Thinking. So we just talked about some critical thinking skills, and you know how important critical thinking is to success. Now let's talk about some advanced ways, some other things you can do to critically think. Here are the objectives, things you should know after going through this chapter. This is one of the charts that's in your textbook, so you should be able to see it a lot closer up when you look at the textbook. There are sometimes some barriers to critical thinking, and a barrier is something that stands in the way of your ability to think. Okay, it stands in the way of you being able to do something. I'm not going to go through every single barrier that's listed. You can see them. But basically, what happens is when you are trying to critically think, it can become difficult to think properly if these things occur. Stress can be a barrier to critical thinking. Believe it or not, stressing is one of the worst things you can do for yourself. Not only does it affect your health, it also affects your ability to think properly. It's important to exercise, get good sleep, to free your mind in order to engage in good critical thinking. Universal intellectual standards, there are 9 of them listed here: clarity, accuracy, precision, relevance, depth, breadth, logic, significance, and fairness. This chart is also in your textbook. These are some questions you could ask if you were trying to clarify or gain accuracy about something or hear the logic of something. So these are just some question stems that might help you if you are trying to accomplish any of these things. Some other barriers to critical thinking are things such as egocentric thinking. When you engage in egocentric thinking, you don't acknowledge or appreciate other people's point of views. If all you're going to do is think about a problem from your perspective, that is not critical thinking. That is thinking that I matter more than anybody else. It's called egocentric because you are centered on yourself. People who only think their ideas are important aren't critically thinking. Socio-centric thinking is another barrier to critical thinking. When people engage in socio-centric thinking, they internalize the norms or prejudices of the society or culture they live in. They put their own cultural norms, their own habits, their own beliefs of their culture in front of everybody else's. If you've ever heard somebody say the United States, if you're here, you should only talk, walk, and act like people in the United States. Well, we don't have an official language in the United States, but there are people who engage in sociocentric thinking and believe that everybody in the United States should speak English. That is sociocentric thinking. When you do that, you inhibit your ability to critically think. William Perry created a theory of cognitive and moral development. He created this theory in 1970 because he was researching college students and he realized that their intellectual and moral development might be different than the intellectual and moral developmental standards of adults. So he came up with 9 stages and 4 overarching categories. And your book goes into those 4 overarching categories. The first category is dualism. Think of dualism as thinking in terms of right or wrong. It's the very lowest level of intellectual and moral thinking. Black and white thinking, no shades of gray. So people who engage in dualistic thinking believe what they're told by an authority figure. They like easy, objective tests like multiple choice tests. Multiplicity is the second overarching category, and this occurs when people start to realize that knowledge isn't necessarily all right or wrong, that there could be more than one way to solving a problem, and people can have different opinions. People who engage in multiplistic thinking listen to authority figures, but they realize that maybe those people don't have all the right answers. So they start to question things a bit. Relativism is the third overarching category. This is when people question everything they hear or see. They're very analytical. They think. They love being able to express themselves through writing essays and making arguments. These are your sophisticated thinkers. And the fourth overarching category is the commitment stage. This is when people are able to weigh the new information they've learned and integrate it with what they've already known in their life or experienced. They challenge what they've heard and they are willing to explore new alternatives. They also make commitments to a chosen field of study and they accept tests and qualifications to get there. So this is somebody who is focused. They know what they have to do. If they want to be a medical doctor, they know that science is super important and they're going to do everything they can to accomplish that. So in your textbook, here's a chart that will explain those four overarching categories. And you can kind of think of dualistic thinking as being like a freshman in college. You know, you come in, you don't really know much, you know, you're coming into your own. And by sophomore year, you might be more multiplistic in your thinking. You start to question some things. And then by junior year, your thinking is more sophisticated and relative. And then senior year, it's long term, you're committed to it, you're in it for the long haul. And that is everything you need to know about advanced critical thinking.